Hey, David here with DIY Mountain Bike. Gonna jump into my latest little project. It's gonna be an e-bike. We're gonna start off, it's probably gonna be a little series. I'm gonna go through some definitions and stuff. But we're gonna start off with considerations, things to look for if you're considering converting an existing bike into an electric bike. So let's get into some close-ups of each of those considerations.
Hey, David here. I'm breaking in real quick. That link I keep mentioning takes you to a step-by-step page. Picking the right bike, what's inside the kit, disassembling your bike, installing the motor, 5 steps for e-bike wiring and components, putting your taillight on, routing and organizing, and then it goes into other items as well. Each one of these pictures you can click on is an article with, in this case, detailed instructions for installing the motor, what tools do you need, and then it includes a video. So I keep mentioning, go to that link below. This is why I've got it all organized in a nice, clean format for you to take you from start to end.
So here's the bike I'm considering. And really what I want you to think about is, before you convert a bike to electric, is really what you're going to use it for. Aggressive off-road mountain biking type of thing, or just simple cruising, or is it going to be your grocery getter? So I've already got an article, and I'll have a link in the description to those things that made me pick this particular bike. It's an older Schwinn. I mean, we're talking about a 20-year-old bike. I'm going to call it like a comfort commuter. It's going to work out perfect for what I want. So let's jump into all of those considerations, 7 or 8 of them that you want to think about. And then I've got an article as well that goes through even longer list, everything, my notes and things I've taken over the last 6 or 8 months in considering a conversion. So number 1, think about the material of the bike, what the frame is made of. Now this guy looks in rough shape. I mean, the cables are in bad shape. We got flat tires, but it's a solid aluminum framed bike. I would only consider an aluminum frame or a steel frame. There are bikes with carbon fiber frames, super lightweight, but being a conversion, you're going to be cranking down on some nuts and bolts. Carbon fiber bikes need some special compounds for tightening things. So the next thing to think about is what's called the triangle, which has to do with the size of the frame itself. So this is a 19-inch, but really the most important thing is to make sure you've got enough room to put the battery in there. So I will have in that article, in that link, a template here that represents the battery. It's going to give you most of the batteries the size I've got. I got a 52-volt battery, and to make sure it'll fit in there. So this has actually got the room for the battery, so it can slide on and off of it. So the battery's going to attach onto these bottle attachments. The next thing to consider is what's called the bottom bracket. So the width of the bottom bracket. This is going to become important when you're ordering your actual motor. So I've got a mid-drive motor coming, and the motor shaft is going to fit through this, it's called the bottom bracket shell. So you need to measure this bottom area. Common size is 68 and to 73. Let's get a good measurement so you can see this. So we're at 68 millimeters. Probably another thing, if you've got some inexpensive calipers, always a good little tool to have. Let's see if we can get this. Let's convert her over to metric. So I'm at 68 millimeters. Perfect. So 68 to 72 is going to be your standard size for that bottom bracket. So the next thing to think about is the angle of the down tube to the chain stay, right? We're going to put you on the stand real quick so I can explain this. The motor I'm getting, the mid-drive motor, is going to fit through here, and it's a round unit, right? And if this down tube comes off at a straight angle and rolls up. And I'll show you a quick little example. You can see if we were to mount at the bottom bracket here and then try to swing that motor up, it would be hitting the frame, right? Another negative we talked about already, is cable routing down below on that down tube. So that, but if it stays low and then rolls up, that motor's gonna hang down real low, right? With this angle popping up, that motor, we can tuck it up higher, give us good ground clearance underneath. The next thing to consider is the cable routing, right? So all the cables on this bike run along the top of the top tube. This is the top tube. It's very common to see cables running down the down tube, particularly underneath here, right? They'll run them down here and then they'll go up around to this rear derailleur or back to the gear shifter, the derailleur in the back. Right, since this is nice and clean underneath, again, we talked about that motor rolling up. That motor can pinch whatever it is that might be down on that down tube. Next item to consider is attachments. Again, for me, this is going to be what I'm going to call the fish bike. I love to fly fish, you guys. My problem is if I float down on my canoe or a little raft, I've got no way to get back to my car. It's usually me by myself, so it's important to have attachment points. So you can see attachments here, perfect for a rack. Attachments down here, perfect for a rack. We'll use those for a rack. We'll use those for fenders. Also up in the front on my front fork, you can see the bolt here. That can be used for racks or a light. And since I've got a big head tube here, I can use this to attach things as well. Think of a rack coming off the front of the bike. A couple, 2 or 3 things to kind of wrap this up have to do with what I'll call performance and comfort, right? Again, I'm using this as a kind of commuter bike, kind of cargo bike. Some fun times with my wife, picnicking, or using it as my fish bike to haul my fishing gear back to the car. So comfort and performance. So seat, this bike has got a suspension seat post. It's going to make it more comfortable. It's got a inexpensive, still works, front fork with suspension. It has V brakes, which aren't the best. When I say they're not the best, if I had a choice between V brakes and disc brakes, I would select disc brakes, but this bike doesn't have them. It's relatively expensive to convert a bike to disc brakes. And then finally, the upright position, right? The handlebars sit high, they're fairly narrow, and I'll be able to sit up kind of tall in that comfortable position. Be good for comfort, be good for visibility. It'll just make for a good ride, comfortable after a long day fishing or running out to get groceries or that type of thing. So hope that helps. Again, check out that link below. I'll go through the full list of things where I talk about, the frame tubing size, is it square, handlebar spacing, kickstand options, cassettes or free wheels, axle sizes, wheel axle spacing, a bunch of good stuff as well in that article.